Hello, this is Randall with Zen Float Co.
Hi, and I'm Monique with Zen.
Cool. We're gonna do a video here today talking about what to be prepared for before, during, and after your float sessions.
Yes, so this will just give you everything you need to know how to prepare your tent and yourself, so before, during, and after a float.
Yep, believe it or not, there's pro tips. It is just as easy as getting in and just floating, but there's a few things we can teach you to make sure that you have a phenomenal float. So we're gonna go through them all here today.
Yes, so we'll start with a few hours before you float. If you're just thinking about floating later on in the day, there's some things that'll just make it a little bit better. So the first one is just, if you are gonna eat, I'm assuming you're gonna eat in the day, but just make sure you eat at least 1 hour before your float when you do eat, because you can feel your stomach digesting the food, and it can be kind of uncomfortable or distracting if you're floating and you're listening to your stomach or feeling your stomach doing digestion.
Very true.
Yes.
Yeah, so give yourself at least an hour, of no eating before floating.
Yes.
And then the other big important one, sometimes people forget this, but you want to avoid stimulants, I guess, before you're floating, and I guess depressants as well. So coffee, don't, if you're a morning floater, don't have your espresso or your cup of coffee before floating. Tea, if it's caffeinated, or really any coffee and tea is going to be caffeinated, so it's probably just best to stay away from that stuff before float.
And energy drinks included in that. Just anything with caffeine, it can make you kind of jittery.
No rock stars, Red
No.
Bulls.
Wait till after.
That also goes for Adderall, Xanax, Valium. I know a lot of us that float, we have previously been prescribed to these medications, so a lot of people actually float to get off Adderall or Xanax and Valium, but you definitely don't want to take that stuff before you float. You won't have a good session at all.
And included with those, any pain pills. A lot of people float for fibromyalgia or chronic pain, and also alcohol. That's another depressant, and so yeah.
Yep, that's probably the biggest one, but definitely don't be drunk before you go float.
Not a good idea.
Not even a glass of wine.
No.
But on that note, some people do smoke weed and other types of consciousness types of drugs. I guess we're not going to go into a lot of that, but there is that possibility. But the main thing here is, if you want to have a good meditative float, stay away from the stimulants and the depressants for sure.
Yes, and then also try not to drink a ton of water before you float. You can't pee in your tank. I guess technically you could, but it's not good. Don't do it. It's a lot of cleaning and a lot of maintenance to get rid of that. So yeah, just try not to drink a ton of water before you're floating, especially if you're going for a long float, like a 2+ hour float.
Yeah, obviously you don't want to pee in your tank, especially if other people are using it. That would be rude.
Gross.
But,
Yeah.
And gross. But also just, you don't want to have that feeling of having to pee. You'll get out of your float zone pretty quick if you have to pee.
Yes. So that being said, we'll move on to right before you float. Right before you float, whether you feel like you have to pee or not, make sure you go. Like Randall said, it's uncomfortable if you feel like you have to pee, and sometimes as soon as you touch water, all of a sudden So just use the bathroom. And then shower. Always shower before you float, but don't use any soap, no shampoo, no conditioner. This is just to get all of those oils off and any dead hair and skin cells, so you aren't dirtying up your tank water.
Yeah, so basically you want to rinse off any soap residue or deodorant or lotion. So just do a good thorough rinsing before you float, and obviously this is going to be good for just keeping the tank clean, but also it makes your water maintenance so much easier and less time consuming. You'll have to clean your filter bag less, add the hydrogen peroxide less. Everything will be less if you just make sure to rinse off before you float.
Yep. So also floating can be or relaxing in a float, especially if you've had a stressful day or you've been really busy, that can be kind of difficult. So just to help you relax, maybe reach a more meditative state, we like to say do some breathing exercises before you get in your tank. You can do it while you're showering, while you're rinsing off, but that just starts to calm yourself down and starts to prep you mentally and prep your body for a float.
Yeah, so you'll do this in the float tank too, but we're mentioning while you're doing your pre-float shower, start your breathing exercises there, or what was the other one called?
Oh, a body scan.
Yeah, can you explain that for people?
So a body scan, it really helps calm yourself physically. You basically start at your toes, work your way up ankles, calves, quads, hamstrings, work your way all the way up the body to the head, and what you do is you'll tense up your toes for maybe 3 seconds and then relax them. Then you tense up your ankles, relax them, tense up your calves, relax them, and this just helps you kind of release extra energy. Your body holds on to stress. If you have had stimulants and you're a little shaky from too much coffee, this will just help you relax and let go so you can reach a deeper level or a deeper meditative state in your float.
Yeah, so it's really good to start this stuff, even before you get in the tank. And we're gonna actually do more videos to teach about breathing exercises and body scans and so forth. So keep an eye out for those. But this is, and we're gonna talk about these too, but you can use these in the shower, our underwater headphones. Basically, if you're not familiar with meditation, go to our website. If you haven't already downloaded it, we have a guided meditation that'll teach you a breathing exercise. So we'll talk about more about that here in a second. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself.
No worries. So really, like when you're thinking of floating, you can think of it as a self-care routine. And so that starts when you're getting ready. So that's why we're talking about breathing and doing the body scans before you even get in the tank. It just is extra preparation. And on top of that, before you get in the tank, just trying to let go of any expectations. Like it doesn't have to be a certain way to be a good float. Or we've talked to a few people who like to set intentions for their float, what they want to get, if they want to focus on one thing, and just getting their mindset ready for that float.
Yeah, so you can either go, I guess, just make a decision. Do you want to go in with no expectations, or do you want to have an intentional float? Which again, we'll talk more about that here in a second. So what's next? So kind of technical stuff is one, taking out the scum bug. So if you have one of our tanks, then you have one of these. Basically, this is part of water maintenance. It's just a spongy thing that you throw on top of your water. So our filter gets, cleans all the water minus, the surface water. This keeps all the oil and everything off of the surface of the water, but it just floats around. So if you don't take it out before you float, it's gonna bump into you and knock you out of your float zone. So take this out before you start floating.
Yes, and along with that, turn the pump off. That shuffles water around, and I have floated a few times and left it on, and you just feel the pump running the whole time. So turn the pump off, but leave everything else on. So the heater pads will stay on, which is important because that'll maintain the water temperature during your float. Because if the water temperature starts to drop and you get cold, that will take you out of your float zone. So pump off, heating pads on.
Yep. And scumbug out.
Scumbug out. Then just some more technical stuff. You want to have a towel or a robe waiting for you right outside of your tank. When you step out, you're going to be dripping with water, and so depending on where your shower is, you'll want something to wipe off so you're not dripping salt and water throughout your house.
Yeah, you might not think that there's a lot of, when you're just getting out of the tank, you just feel wet, but there's a lot of salt on you. So if you don't, take time to dry off before you walk to the shower, you're going to notice salt all over your house.
Yeah, which once it crystallizes and dries out, it's a pain to try and scrape out of carpet.
Yeah, so that's one of the big reasons on our new tank. We actually built a step pad out on the new tank. So just have, I have a little towel rack right there. Also, I'll put a water bottle, or bring a water bottle with me. We actually have D-rings inside the tank so you can hang the water bottle if you want to, or some people like to have a spray bottle to spray down their face, or what have you while they're in the tank. So towel or robe, water bottle, spray bottle, all right there by the tank.
Yep, and then before you get in, set an alarm. If you want to just float for however long, you don't have to do this, but if you're on a time schedule or something like that, just be sure to set an alarm so you don't just float all day. Get trapped in it.
I've seen it happen. I've seen people who have told me that they're claustrophobic and weren't going to be in there, that were in there for 3 or 4 hours and didn't realize it. So
yeah,
you definitely want to set an alarm.
Yeah, it's really easy to lose track of time in a float tank.
So just and to do that, you can just have your smartphone or whatever device, and if you've got the underwater headphones, it's gonna it'll make sure you get out. If you don't have the underwater headphones and you have a smartphone, and when you set the alarm, it's gonna vibrate. So I was just thinking you could lean it against the tank, and when it vibrates, it'll wake you up for sure. That's
actually a good idea, because you'll start to feel that if you can't hear it. Just because you're gonna be underwater with headphones, so it'll be hard to hear if you don't have the
underwater headphones?
Yeah, the underwater headphones.
Yep, so set an alarm, and then condensation. So especially now, since it's winter, some of us are gonna have more condensation in our tank. So basically, whether it's the tent or the tank, a good way to get all the condensation off is just to walk around the tank before you get in and just pat the sides of the tank, and it'll get all the water off the sides. Or take a hand towel in there and wipe it down, or with the new tank you could probably use a squeegee basically to get it all off. And the reason why you want to do that, it's not super necessary, because our tank, the way it's designed, is a teepee, so all the condensation slides down, but drips can happen, so it's just better to get all the water off the sidewalls to make sure you have a good long float.
Yeah, if a drip falls on you, it's gonna bring you out of that meditation again. So now we'll move on to during your float, what to expect, how to be prepared. So we've talked about this before, but using the underwater headphones, these are great depending on what you're doing in your float, which we'll talk about in a second, but music, guided meditation, learning a language, audiobooks, things like that, this is a great option. If you're not going to use underwater headphones, we recommend using earplugs. Just keeps the salt water out. You don't want salt water staying in your ear. A lot of people get ear infections or swimmer's ear if they're in water too long. So we recommend earplugs or headphones.
Yeah, and there's a lot of salt in this water. It's 800 pounds in 200 gallons. So if as I mentioned, when you get out, you're going to have water all over you that will very quickly turn into salt crystals, and that happens in your ear if you don't have earplugs, which is very difficult to get out. So wear earplugs or these headphones.
Yes, and so once you're in the tank, you want to make sure that you center yourself. So because when you step in and lay down, it's going to push the water around, which is just going to because it's such a small area, it'll keep moving back and forth. So there's a few different ways to do this. How I personally do it is I'll lay down, I'll touch my hands out to the side and just hold myself still until the water stills. And then that's when you can begin your float, because you don't want to be moving around or bumping into a wall during your float.
Yeah, so the same reason that we tell you to take the scum bug out, because if it bumps you, it's going to knock you out of your float zone. Mm-hmm. Same thing if you don't take time to center yourself in the tank when you first get started, you're going to drift into the sidewalls. So this is one of those pro tips a lot of people don't figure out unless somebody tells them. But just like Mo said, you just want to extend your arms really for what would you say, 5 minutes of the first float or your float. That's all it takes for the waves to die down, and then you just slowly bring your arms back to your comfortable side resting position, and you'll stay in dead center in the tank as long as you do that.
Mm-hmm. And so another pro tip, do not, whatever you do, don't touch your eyes. Once you're in the salt water, do not touch your eyes. It burns so bad. It's just, you're getting salt water in your eyes. And so that's why a lot of people will say keep a spray bottle. So if you do accidentally, if you touch your face or wipe something, or you just get salt water in your eyes, you can quickly spray your face off and remove it. But there's really, once you're in there, you can't wipe your hands on anything. So avoid at all costs touching your eyes.
Yeah, if you touch your eyes and salt gets in there, you're not gonna float.
It's not fun.
I mean, you're not gonna have a good float session. I've done it. It's very painful.
Me too, it burns. Sometimes you just forget and you're like, ah. So the spray bottle is really helpful that you can just hang on the D-rings.
Do not touch your eyes, otherwise death ensues. That's what we say.
Yes, basically. So on top of that, during your float, we'll talk about different reasons for floating, which might influence setting an intention or just letting go for that float. The biggest reason you probably hear about is meditation. It's super easy to meditate in a float tank and reach that next level. And that's great if that's what your aim is, but we just want to point out that floating is also great for problem solving. So if you get in a tank and your mind is racing and racing and it's hard to shut your thoughts off, it's okay to let your thoughts run, and maybe there's something that you do need to think about and work through, and a float tank is a great place to do that. So yeah, meditation, problem solving, some other ways are accelerated learning. So
yeah, these are all good points. So as far as the float tank is concerned, I mean, a lot of like pro athletes or even corporate executives or just high performance people, you know, floating helps with your creativity, problem solving. So like Mo said, if you go in and you know you got stuff on your mind, it's okay. Let it be on your mind. The float tank is going to help you come up with solutions quicker than you will on your own. So you don't need to stop your thoughts, you know, unless if that's your intention is to relax, then you do the breathing exercises. But you can also do accelerated learning, like learning a new language or really anything.
Audiobooks.
Yep, audiobooks. You'll retain that stuff a lot faster. You know, most of us humans, when we read a book, we probably, and learn anything new, we only keep 5 or 10%. You're going to keep a lot more percentages in the float tank for sure. So
another one is floating for physical recovery. You mentioned a lot of athletes float, and the Epsom salt is really good for muscle recovery. So yeah, it's another reason to float: physical recovery, pain management. So just think about why you're floating before you get in it, or yeah, what you want to get out of.
Yeah, a lot of people, we have several customers that they didn't buy the tank to float for meditation or mood disorders. They literally bought it only for the magnesium sulfate bath. Basically those minerals that you're absorbing, your body needs them desperately, and we don't get enough of it through food. So the immediate physical benefits are there. I mean, we're going to do a whole nother video that just talks about magnesium sulfate and how good it is for you. So so that's a reason why people float. I think we got them all there.
Yeah, I think so. There's tons of reasons to float basically, but just know like whatever you're using it for, that's okay. That's what you need, and so keep that in mind. And then different things you can do during your float. For example, I have a really hard time relaxing in a float tank just because I'm really high energy, and so guided meditations, I love doing those for maybe the first 20 minutes of my float, and then I'll just let it be quiet. But that's another great use for these headphones, is listening to guided meditation to help you relax, to bring you out of your thoughts. On top of that, music can be really healing. It invokes a lot of emotion, so just listening to music through the headphones is a great option. Other things you can do, like Randall mentioned, audiobooks. You'll retain a lot more information, or learning a new language. Those are great things to do in the tank. Or old school, just let it be quiet. Sensory deprivation.
Yeah, so here, hold the end of this. We'll show them here.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask if we put, you know, speakers in our tank, like commercial tanks, you know. I actually like these better than having speakers in a tank, but as you notice, they're 9 feet long. So you can plug this into your smartphone or your Bose SoundLink or whatever outside of the tank. And then, you know, I've even gone to where my head is towards the back of the tank and not towards the door, and still had plenty of room, you know. But now I float with my head towards the door, so there's definitely a lot of room with these long cord.
And you don't have to worry about anything getting wet or covered in salt with these, so
Yep, and they double as earplugs, so they'll keep the salt out. So also, I think we didn't write this down, Mo, but I think you've researched this. Some people use pillows in there, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there's neck pain, or if you get nervous that your head's gonna fall under the water, it's hard to relax. There are float halos, which you can put under your neck, and that takes a lot of tension and stress off of your shoulders, neck, upper back. And those areas are all common places where we hold tension. So a float halo, that's a great option for that. If you have low back pain, you can get one of those pool noodles and just cut it in half and put it under your knees when you're floating, and that'll take tension off of your lower back. And another thing is just play around with different arm positions. Some people float by their sides. I float with mine up here because it helps take tension off of my neck. Some people float with it on their chest or belly because that's a relaxing, comforting position. So don't be afraid to move around with positions or stretching. Because floating is so good for muscle recovery, stretching is a great thing to do in a float tank. So yeah, just play around with different positions and find what's comfortable for you.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Stretching before and after floats is huge just because it releases the folic acid, which will help you absorb the magnesium in the salt water better. So some people will even do just light yoga poses when they first get in the tank before they lay down. So that would be, right when actually we're still during your float, so that's right.
Yeah, during your float.
So I think that's it on during your float, right?
Yep. So after your float, what do you do? So we touched on this a little, but right when you get out, you're gonna be covered in salt water. So grab your towel, your robe, wipe yourself down, and then first thing, go to the shower. And this time you do want to use soap and shampoo. You want to get all the salt off of you. Make sure you clean in your ears. Salt likes to hide there. So yeah, and Epsom salt's really good for skin and hair. It makes it super soft, but you still want to rinse it all off.
Yep. So no soap or anything before floating, but after you definitely want to get all the salt off of you. So soap and shampoo, all that stuff is okay.
Yes, and then some technical things really quick. Throw the scum bug back in. This will help absorb any oils that were left or any hair. That's the best time, so just toss it in before you even go shower. And then turn the pumps back on.
So basically just plug the pumps back in. Remember, our system is all very low energy usage. It's high efficiency, I guess is the way to put it. So they're designed to always be on. The only thing that goes off is your pumps when you're floating. So throw the scum bag back in, turn your pumps back on so the water starts cleaning again, and that's it.
Yeah, and when you float, that's a great time to just do water maintenance. So just quickly check levels, things like that. Make sure everything's good to go now that you're done floating. And so outside of the more technical things, it's really good to take quiet time after your float. A lot of stuff can come up in a float. So just reflecting on that. And we have these float journals, which are awesome, but it can be a great time to just journal and process everything, remember everything that came up in your float. So just working through it all.
Yeah, so you can get if you got the ultimate package or the float ready package from us, this will come with it. But if you didn't, you can buy these on our website. They're made out of wood. It's called a float journal. I don't know if you guys can see, but like Mo said, we're talking about having a lot of realizations in the tank. Personally, professionally, we're doing accelerated learning or being creative. Or even in physical recovery, a lot of athletes are gonna visualize their game, before they go play. So you just want to journal, as much as you can. Your floating practice will become much more valuable if you document it, and it's just good to journal anyways. So take some time after your float, and you've got all your technical stuff done, and take some quiet time. Also, you're gonna notice when you're done floating, you're overwhelmingly relaxed, basically. So
post float glow.
Exactly. So you want to take some time, you know, just to come back to reality again, even before you're going back and getting in cars and doing different things. Just get back to real life for a minute.
Yep. So
I think we covered a lot of stuff here. I really hope all this stuff helps. It's you know, we're recording these videos just to empower you guys and make it so that you don't have to reach out to us every time you have questions. We're just proactively giving you all this information. So put it to use and you're gonna get really powerful floats really quickly.
yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.